Lambda function. Use cases for asynchronous invocation of the Lambda function. That's what we are going to see. And we are going to see the configuration we are going to see, and we will be seeing something called the performance, how to increase the performance of the Lambda function, how the Lambda function will be executed initially. So how the Lambda function will be executed, like we'll be discussing as part of that particular thing. We'll be discussing about the cold starts and all those things. Lambda function, we call it as Lambda function concurrency and throttling. Concurrency and throttling. Lambda function concurrency and throttling. That's what we are going to discuss. And we will be discussing some of the permissions that we give as per the Lambda function. Permissions that we give as per the Lambda function. Let's deal with QI and A after that. Okay, very short. Okay, please do understand that. Okay, no issues with that. Okay, the thing is, okay, let me put that one here. So let's deal with asynchronous invocation use cases of the Lambda function, guys. Let me first create what is asynchronous invocation. Asynchronous invocation means we just trigger the Lambda function. The resources just trigger the Lambda function. Suppose S3 is the one which triggers the Lambda function. It does not wait for the Lambda function output, whether that Lambda function is giving a proper output or not. Okay, that is asynchronous invocation. That's what it is. Okay, so whenever the resource triggers a Lambda function, so if the if the resource is not waiting for the response from the Lambda function, whether it is successfully executed or not, so such kind of invocations of the Lambda function is something called asynchronous invocations. What is invocation, guys? Invocation means execution, invoking, okay, triggering the Lambda function. Okay, that's what meaning of invocation, guys. That's what the meaning of invocation. Triggering of Lambda function is nothing but a invocation. Okay, now let's just move there to the AWS account. So now let me create a function, guys. The function name is async async function. Let me just create a function with this particular name. I would like to just provide Python 3.12 version. You can just clearly see that. And I would like to just click on create a function. I'm just creating a function, actually, just creating a function. So now I would like to create a function. Let's wait for it to be created. Yeah. So you see that here my function got created. This is a Lambda function. This is how it looks like, right? So now what we are going to do is we are going to this is the Lambda function code. That's what you can see that very clearly, actually. So if you see, I'm just trying to print the event. Okay, if in the Lambda function, there's a Lambda handler code, guys. There's a code of Lambda handler. This is a Lambda handler is a method in this function. As part of this Lambda handler method, we have this particular code under that particular Lambda handler, right? What you need to understand now is, so what is this event? Event is the input that is passed to this Lambda function before execution. Whenever someone triggers this Lambda function, so the input suppose let's say S3 is triggering this Lambda function. S3 is triggering this Lambda function. What S3 is sending as an input to this Lambda function is holded by the event, actually is holded by the event. Okay, so S3, whenever it triggers the Lambda function, it sends a JSON document kind of thing. Actually, that particular JSON document is holded by this particular event. Let me just print that event. Okay, print print of event, guys. Print of event. I would like to deploy this Lambda function. You can see that there, and I'm going to deploy this Lambda function. It is just deploying, actually. So wait, yeah, successfully deployed. Let me click on test. Let me create an event, because here as of now there is no S3 invoking Lambda function. But yeah, I'm trying to invoke this Lambda function. You can see that here by clicking on it, create new event. Okay, I'm just giving the event name as test. This is the JSON document I'm passing as part of this particular event. Okay, while triggering, if you just click on save. So now Now I've created an event and click on test, guys. You can see the output. It is going to uh, print the event. You can see that here, this is the event that is printed. That is printed because we have printed the event. That means this is the event we have passed as an input. You can see that we here very clearly, this is a key one, value one, key two, value two, key three, value three. That's a input that we have passed. If you just see that here, key one, value one, key two, value two, key three, value three. In the similar way, here I am triggering the Lambda function by clicking on test Lambda function. But in case of asynchronous invocations, S3 triggers the Lambda function. Okay, in that case, S3 is going to send some JSON document. That JSON document will be handled by this event actually. That's what you need to understand from the point. Okay, that is something called event. What is event, guys? Event is the input that is passed to the Lambda function by the one who is triggering the Lambda function actually. If the S3 is triggering the Lambda function, so event is sent by the S3. Okay, if CloudWatch events are triggering Lambda function, event is sent by CloudWatch events. So something like that. That's an event, guys. That's what you need to understand from the point. Now let's deal with this. Okay, how to add the asynchronous invocation? I want uh CloudWatch events to trigger this Lambda function. I want CloudWatch events to trigger this Lambda function. How I can make the CloudWatch events trigger this Lambda function asynchronously, not in synchronous manner, asynchronously. Just they trigger the Lambda function. They don't care. CloudWatch event don't care about the response of the Lambda function, whether the response or whether the output of the Lambda function is successful, whether the execution of the Lambda function is successful, or whether the execution of the Lambda function is failure. That particular thing, they don't care actually. So what is that? Event. CloudWatch events actually. That is the meaning of asynchronous Lambda function, asynchronous triggering of Lambda function actually. That's what you need to understand. Click on add trigger. I would like to click on add trigger. If you could just go to your Lambda function, you'll be having something called add trigger actually. If you click on that, and you will be having to from what source that you can trigger the Lambda function. You can trigger the Lambda function from CloudFront. You can trigger the Lambda function from code commit. From many places you can trigger your Lambda function. But I am going to trigger the Lambda function using CloudWatch events. If you see that here, this is a CloudWatch events, guys. And now you can see that here. Okay, I would create a new rule. If you see that here, this is a new rule, CloudWatch event rule I am creating. Okay, so let me create something called per minute rule. Okay, this is the rule name. Okay, so I would like to just put something like this. This is a per minute rule. I would like to just put the description as well, per minute trigger. Okay, that's what it is. And this is schedule pattern. So while triggering the cloud like AWS Lambda, so CloudWatch is going to ask you the cron expression. Based on the cron expression only, CloudWatch will be able to understand when to trigger this Lambda function, whether for every 1 minute, whether for every 1 day. What is we have two things, guys: scheduled event and the event pattern. Okay, now when to use event pattern? Suppose whenever the EC2 machine launched from the auto scaling group, then only the Lambda function should be triggered. In that case, you need to use something called event pattern. Whenever some event is appearing within the AWS account, then the Lambda function should be triggered. In that case, you need to use event pattern. But when to use scheduled expression? If you have some scheduled activity, like for example, for every 1 day at 5 p.m. evening, the Lambda function should be triggered. Okay, so if you have such kind of use case, then you should use something called schedule expression. So I would like to use that schedule expression. I would like to use something called cron of uh ***** 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 * 1 star star star. Okay, this is what the cron expression I am using for this, and let me click on add, guys. Okay, you see that here I have added a schedule expression is not valid. One second, let me check. Okay, okay, let me just, you can also put something like this, rate of 1 minute, something like that. I would like to click on add. Okay, I have added this particular CloudWatch event, guys. I have added this particular CloudWatch event. Now, if you click on this event, and this is the you will be switched to the configuration tab of your Lambda function, and you will be having something called triggers. What is this triggers represent in this configuration, guys? Triggers represent who is going to trigger this Lambda function. Triggers represent who is going to trigger this Lambda function. Here, CloudWatch events are going to trigger this Lambda functions. That is what it will be shown here. Okay, you just click on this particular event. Okay, it will show you the you can see that here target is going to be the async function. You can just see that here. That means it is going to trigger the async function. Okay, it is going to trigger for async function actually, and you can monitor, like these are all the things that you have from the CloudWatch event rules site. Okay, just okay, so you see that here, this is how asynchronous event, like using CloudWatch scheduled rules, you can trigger the Lambda function. You can trigger the Lambda function based on that. Okay, let me just click on edit. Okay, let me just update this event pattern. Okay, come on. I want to trigger. Okay, invalid cron expression. That's fine for me then. That's fine for me. That means for every 1 minute, this is the meaning of that. For every 1 minute, Lambda function should be triggered actually. Just click on that. If you just click on per minute rule, okay, that should be the target, and this should be the monitoring, and that will be showing the triggered. You can see that here now. Okay, invocations. If you see the invocations monitoring of the tab, monitoring tab, you can see that here my Lambda function got invoked. At what time, guys? It is showing 3:25. It's a UTC time zone. I would like to switch to the local time zone. Okay, if you now see the when this got triggered, it is triggered at 8:55 just now, right? You can see that here. Now let's check that particular thing as part of your place. Okay, this should be triggered. Now, if this Lambda function got triggered, the event, the input that is sent by the CloudWatch event rule should be printed, right? Where this particular CloudWatch event rule input will be printed, if you see that particular thing, that will be printed as part of the CloudWatch log groups. If you just click on view CloudWatch log groups, so if you just click on view CloudWatch log groups, so that will be printed as part of here. You can see that here, this is the one. If you click on this, okay, this is the event rule, sorry, event stream. And if you see that here, if you click on this one, so this is the input that is being passed by the CloudWatch event rule to our AWS Lambda function. Okay, so it will be triggering the Lambda function for every minute. If you see that here, this is a JSON rule. Now, what it has ID information, it has detail type, what's the event type, source it has, account it has, time when it is triggered. You can see that there, and it is going to have the region where this particular thing exists, the resources. That means the ARN of the CloudWatch event. That's what it is going to have as part of this particular event, guys. and this is the input. This is the input that is being passed by the CloudWatch events to the Lambda function. That's what you need to understand from the point. Okay, that's the thing. So you see that here multiple triggers has happened. This is one first time, and this is second time, and this is third time. It is keep on printing the events because it is going to trigger the Lambda function for every 1 minute. Okay, that's what you need to understand from the point. Okay, for every 1 minute the Lambda function will be triggered by this particular CloudWatch event rule. Okay, that's what the point is. Now this is one way of configuring this particular Lambda function with asynchronous way actually. So the other way is something like this is with the CloudWatch events. Okay, you can also configure from the S3. Just let me go to the S3. Okay, just click on the S3 actually, and let me just click on S3 bucket. Okay, click on create a bucket. Okay, test S3 async trigger bucket, bucket bucket. Now if you see that here, if you just scroll down, okay, if you just click on create a bucket, guys, okay, so what you need to do is you just need to click on this bucket, go to the properties, and you will be having something called uh event notifications. Send a notification when specific event occur in your bucket. That's what it is saying. You can click on create event notification and just give the event name as S3 async trigger, ASYNC async lambda trigger. That's what it is. And I would like to not provide all these things. Okay, you can also provide what are the things that need to be as part of the prefix in what folders. See, what is a requirement that I have is whenever some object is uploaded to the S3 bucket, so the trigger should happen, the Lambda function trigger should happen. That's what my requirement is here. In which folder, what's the use of prefix, in which folder inside the S3 bucket, if the object is uploaded, the Lambda should trigger that particular folder. You need to put it here. If I want to trigger the Lambda function, if the object is uploaded to the test folder, then you need to just put test. Okay, then the Lambda function is going to be triggered only when the object is uploaded to the test folder. That's what it is. And suffix, what is a suffix, guys? Suffix means in for what file extensions that Lambda function should be triggered. File extensions. Okay, that's a suffix, guys. Okay, just let me put, if that is possible, all, and this is also all, for example. Now all object create events, I'm just clicking on this one. Whenever the existing object is being updated, whenever the new object is being posted, and whenever it is copied, and whenever it is uploaded in a multi-part completed actually, so you get the big files to S3 bucket will be uploaded by the AWS in a multi-part upload complete. Like it will divide that particular file into multiple parts and upload into the S3 bucket. That is something called multi-part upload. So whenever this events occurs, I want my Lambda function to be triggered. That's what I'm saying here, all object creation events. Okay, suppose you can also have this object removal. That means whenever some removal of the object happens within the S3 bucket, then the Lambda function should be triggered. That's what you are saying from this. Okay, all those things which you have it here, but yeah, that's what it is. Now let me just scroll down, and you are going to have multiple things. Okay, whenever this event happens, like this particular event which I've selected, what should be done? Okay, what should be done is the question. Okay, let me just select all these things, or you can also only select this one. Anything is fine. So whenever this event appears, suppose what we have selected this event as, we have selected something called whenever the object is uploaded to the S3 bucket. Whenever the object is uploaded to the S3 bucket, then the event should be triggered. That's what we have selected, right? So whenever this this event has appeared, uploading of the object to the S3 bucket. What should be the destination? What S3 should trigger? Okay, you can have the three triggers in the S3. You can trigger the Lambda function, you can trigger the SNS topic, you can trigger the SQSQ. Here, I would like to trigger the Lambda function if someone uploads the object into the S3 bucket. So here I'm selecting the Lambda function, and I would like to select the existing Lambda function here, async function. This is the function that should be triggered, and let me click on save changes. Okay, so I would like to save the changes, and you can see that here event notification trigger got created. Okay, you can see that here the is async Lambda trigger, the event got created without any issues. Now what will happen, guys? See here we have, let me just go to the Lambda function. Okay, and let me just go to the configuration, and you will be having something called permissions. You will be having something called permissions, guys, here. Okay, if you see that whenever someone access, whenever some trigger is added to your Lambda function, here we have added the trigger of CloudWatch events actually, and refresh this one. You should also see the S3. Okay, so just we'll wait, we'll see the S3. Yeah, you can see that here now we have added the S3 as well. So whenever someone added this CloudWatch, like whenever someone added this trigger to the AWS Lambda, okay, the thing is you need to understand, Lambda function should allow this particular things, whether it is CloudWatch events and the S3 bucket. Lambda function should allow this CloudWatch events or the S3 bucket to trigger itself, How the Lambda function is going to allow the CloudWatch event rules, and as well as the S3 bucket, is using resource-based policy, guys. Resource-based policy as part of the Lambda function is used to allow by the other resources, other AWS services, to trigger the Lambda function. Lambda will allow, if you have resource based policy, Lambda will allow other AWS services to trigger the Lambda function. That is something called resource based policy, guys. If you just click on this particular one of the policy, and if you see one of the policy belongs to the like CloudWatch event trigger, and the other policy belongs to the S3 bucket. If you just click on one of the thing, and you can see that here this is the policy which belongs to the CloudWatch event rule. Okay, so that means it is allowing this particular CloudWatch event rule to trigger itself through this particular Lambda, through this resource based policy, guys. That's what you need to understand from the point. And you will be seeing something called other thing. If you just see that here, it is allowing this particular S3 bucket to trigger this particular Lambda function, guys. That's the meaning of S3 bucket. Like that's the meaning of S3, like this resource based policy. Let me just click on close, and I would like to go to the S3 bucket, and let me just scroll to the top and go to the objects, and let me upload, and let me click on add files, and I would like to add some file to the like this particular S3 bucket. So this action of me uploading of S3 bucket will trigger the Lambda function, That's what you need to understand from the point. Okay, because we have added that S3 as a trigger to this particular Lambda function. That's what you need to understand from the point. That's a point that you need to understand, as we have added the S3 to trigger the Lambda function as through the asynchronous invocation. Then the Lambda function is going to be triggered whenever some object is added to the S3. As we have also see whenever you are adding some triggers to this Lambda function, you know not doing anything, automatically resource based policy will be updated. You know of managing this one as of now. So this one will be automatically updated whenever you add some triggers to your Lambda function. So that means you are saying that this particular CloudWatch event rule should trigger this Lambda function, this particular S3 should trigger this Lambda function. That's what you are saying as part of this particular thing. So this is how other examples I would like to show you how you can asynchronously trigger your Lambda function, by the other services in AWS, for example, CloudWatch events and the S3 bucket. So that's what you need to understand from the point. Is this points clear, guys, until here? Anyone have any questions on this? Okay. We can again check the logs. Deepak, we can again check the logs. How we have checked the logs. Something like this, you can check the logs and check whether that a particular invocation has been completed or not. Okay, you can just check the logs and get that information. Okay, so that's the thing. You can see that here for every minute, my function is getting triggered, and and you can see that here because of that. That's the thing. Okay, so just click on. Okay, now let's deal with the other things, guys. Let's deal with the other things that you need to understand. So just let's move forward. Okay. So if you just go to this particular asynchronous function, this particular dashboard is very important. If you just see that here, this is a monitor, guys. This is a monitor. These particular dashboards are very important when you are really working on the things actually. So that's what thing. So now let's say your Lambda function is not getting invoked and your Lambda function is not getting executed, and I'm like we are not sure whether the Lambda function is getting executed or not, because your expected functionality by the Lambda function is not happening. Suppose Lambda function is going to delete the files regularly from the EBS volumes, okay, but the Lambda function is unable, like files are still exists, all the like from past few days the Lambda function is not getting deleted actually. So you need to first check whether Lambda function is executing or not. How you can check whether the Lambda function is invoked or not? You can just click on this particular dashboard. You can very clearly see that it will be showing whether that particular Lambda function is invoked or not. You can see all these data points and the time the time duration when that the Lambda function is invoked. It is going to show you all the things actually. You can see that here at this particular time, this many number of invocations are there. That means this many people are invoking this Lambda function. It will show you all these things, guys. Okay, that's what the thing is. Okay, Lambda function invocations. Okay, you just see that here the Lambda function invocations dashboard or the panel is very important for you. From this you will be able to understand whether the Lambda function is getting executed or whether the Lambda function is not getting executed or not. Okay, and you are going to get the time interval as well. That's what it is. The next dashboard is that is very important is this one, error count. If you just click on that, okay, if the Lambda function is not successful, the Lambda function is not successful, it is going to show you the error count here. If it is going to show you the error count here, this red symbol, this red color things represents the errors. As you can see that here, there are multiple times the Lambda got triggered, the green ones, but now in all those times there are no errors, because the red ones, you can see that here, red ones just show you the zero execution errors as zero. That means that the errors, the Lambda function got executed perfectly fine without any issues. Okay, that's what you need to understand from the point. Okay, there are no execution errors. The success rate is 100%. The success rate is 100%. That's what you need to understand from the point. Okay, so this is how you can check whether the Lambda function getting executed through these further invocations. If it is getting executed, whether this is getting errored or uh, whether that is successful, you can check from this error count and success rate panel. Okay, so there are lots of panels for you, so you can just check the things. Actually, you can see that here there are lots of panels for you. The duration also, you can check at that particular minute how much time the Lambda function has took in order to execute. Actually, for you can see that here at this particular minute the Lambda function only took 1.53 milliseconds, and at this particular minute the whenever this Lambda function got triggered at this particular minute, it only took how much minute? Okay, just let me just go here. Okay, 5.91 millisecond. Okay, like at this particular minute it only took 12.46, and at this particular minute it only took 12.51, and this at this particular minute it took 32.66. These are milliseconds, guys. These are not seconds, these are milliseconds. You can just understand how fast the Lambda function triggers are happening. So this is also very important, whether how much time the Lambda function is taking time to trigger. Okay, that's what it is. Now let's see, let what we'll do, we will just go here, and I would like to update the Lambda function code to time dot sleep of 2 seconds. For example, I would like to click on that and deploy the changes, and I would like to test these changes, guys. Okay, you should see some 2 seconds waiting instead of that things. Let me just deploy it. It has deployed successfully, and let me click on test it. Okay, it has tested. We can see that here. Come on, how this time can be imported actually. So let's see. Let me just import time, for example, deploy it, and test it. You can see that here Lambda function waited for 2 seconds because we have put time dot sleep as 2 seconds. You need to first import the time, and then you need to use the time module. Okay, now if you just go to the monitor, and if you just go to the duration, you just click on that. Okay, just we'll wait for the things to be replicated here. Yeah, you can see that here. As we have made the time to like Lambda function to sleep for 2 seconds, now it went to 2k milliseconds. Okay, duration of the Lambda function, time taken by the Lambda function to be executed is 2 milliseconds. Okay, you can see that very clear here. That is what you need to understand. You will be getting the clear information how much time the Lambda function is getting executed using this particular panel. That is this one, duration panel. Okay, duration panel. See, this is how you need to monitor the Lambda function, guys. This is how you need to monitor the Lambda function using these particular things. Okay, these are very important. What is this? Invocations tells what the like how many number of times the lambda function, like what time the whether lambda function is getting invoked or not. Duration tells you what? Duration tells you how much time the lambda function getting executed. That's what the duration tells you. And this error count and this particular error count and success rate tells you what that what that tells you actually. This tells you about like whenever the lambda function got invoked, that invocation is successful or the error. That's what it is going to tell you. And it is good that we have total concurrent executions. What this particular lambda, what this particular total concurrent execution tells actually, how like how concurrently, how parallelly the lambda function is getting executed. Okay, every time the concurrent, the only one time the cat every whenever the lambda function is triggered, only once the lambda function is getting executed. That means there is no concurrent executions of the lambda function. Same time, multiple times the lambda functions are not executing actually. That's what you need to understand from the point. Okay, so that's a concurrent executions actually. So you change just clearly, these are the very important dashboards, guys. From this only we'll be debugging the things, whether my lambda function is properly working fine or not. That's what you need to understand from the point. Exactly 2k milliseconds, and that means that's a 2 seconds duration. Why that is 2 seconds, guys? Because we have just put our lambda function to be running for 2 seconds, time dot sleep for 2 seconds. That's what it is, right? So this is how you can monitor your lambda function. This is how you can monitor your lambda function as part of your lambda function things actually. That's what it is. Okay, you'll be understanding by monitoring of the lambda function, you'll be understanding whether that is executing perfectly fine or not. Okay, the next thing is configuration, guys. In the configuration you have multiple things. If you just go to the general configuration, okay, you will be having something called this particular things. In the general configuration, if you click on edit this general configuration, you have something called memory. Memory. Suppose your function is allocated CPU proportional to the memory configure. So that means, what is the meaning of that, guys? If you want to increase the CPU of your function, okay, if you want to increase the CPU allocated to your function, then you should increase your memory. You will not be having direct option to increase the CPU. You need to increase your lambda function memory so that the CPU will also be increased. That the CPU, the function is allocated CPU proportional to the memory configure. It's a proportional. Okay, whenever you increase memory, CPU will be automatically increased. You don't have separate option. You don't have separate option to for the lambda function to increase the CPU. But yeah, whenever you increase the memory, the CPU of this particular lambda function will be increased. Okay, the next configuration that you see there is ephemeral storage. If you have some if you want to have some temporary storage for your lambda function, you can just put the ephemeral storage. You can configure up to 10 GB of ephemeral storage actually. That's what you need to understand. You can configure up to 10 GB of ephemeral storage as part of your thing. Okay, for that's a temporary storage actually. Okay, that's what the thing is. Okay, now the next thing is timeout. What is this timeout, guys? Timeout means within how many number of seconds the lambda function should be executed. How much time that you are giving to the lambda function to execute. Actually, I'm just giving 3 seconds. If the lambda function is not getting executed within 3 seconds, lambda function is going to throw you the timeout error. That's what the timeout, guys. Okay, the lambda function, how much time the lambda function to should take. What is this timeout? How much time the lambda function should take to execute actually. So that is timeout. Okay, that means I'm just giving 3 seconds. If you just give 3 seconds, lambda function should be executed within 3 seconds. If it is taking more than 3 seconds, then that lambda function is going to throw you an error. So the maximum timeout seconds for this particular lambda function is 15 minutes. You can just until 15 minutes, you can give the lambda function to execute actually. So that's what it is. So you can maximum make the lambda function to be executed until 15 minutes. If your lambda function is executing more than 15 minutes, so that's not a lambda use case. You should not use AWS lambda. Okay, so lambda function can be like running more than like until the 15 minutes. Okay, lambda function maximum time duration the lambda function can run is 15 minutes. Okay, that's what it is. So I that's a timeout, guys. I'll try to show you this one. And this is the execution role. What is the use of this execution role is, if lambda function want to if lambda function want to access some other things in the AWS account. For example, Lambda function want to access CloudWatch log group to store the logs, right? So then Lambda function, you need to attach execution role to this Lambda function, and then the execution role is going to give the permissions to the Lambda function to push the logs to the AWS CloudWatch log groups. If you see that here, view role details in IAM, this, let me show you this particular role in IAM. Click on that. You see that here you have some policy attached, and in this policy you can see that here it is create CloudWatch log stream. That means it is allowed, Lambda function is going to be allowed to create CloudWatch log stream, and it is allowed to put log events to the AWS CloudWatch. Okay, that's what you need to understand. You can put the log, these are the two permissions that the Lambda function has through this particular IAM role to put the logs to the CloudWatch events and to create a CloudWatch event stream. Actually, that's what you need to understand from the point. Okay, CloudWatch log stream, not event stream. That's what it is. Putting the logs to the CloudWatch log stream and create the log stream permissions will be getting by this particular role to the Lambda function. Okay, that's what it is. Okay, now let me click on save it. Now let me just make the Lambda function to be executed more than 3 seconds, because we have just made the Lambda function to, like, we have just seen the configuration, the Lambda function should be executed within 3 seconds. That's what we have seen. But let me make the Lambda function to be executed more than 3 seconds, let's say 20 seconds, and what it is going to show you. Okay, let me click on deploy, and I would like to test this particular Lambda function. Okay, so let me click on test. Okay, if it is executing more than 3 seconds, which is configured by your configuration, as per the configuration, it is going to show you the sandbox timeout. That means, what is this sandbox timeout, guys? Sandbox timeout means the Lambda function got timed out. Okay, it is taking more than assumed time, more than configured time to execute itself. That's what the timeout is. Let me just click on deploy. Now it should be perfectly working fine without any issues. Let me click on again test. Okay, I'm just made back that to 2 seconds. Let me click on test. Okay, now you can see that here it got executed perfectly fine without any issues. Okay, the next part is as per the configuration. If you just go to here, actually, so you can have the function URLs, guys. You can have the function URL. What is a function URL? You can directly invoke the function from your browser. Okay, let me just go here. I would like to just return something, return hello. Okay, let me just put here return hello. Okay, let me click on deploy. Okay, you can just click on let it deploy the code. You can just go to the configuration and you can click on the create function URL. Let me just provide the none and let me just click on save. Okay, so there will be a function URL here. If you just copy that and put that function URL in a new tab, that is going to trigger the Lambda function, and it is going to show you the output that the Lambda function is returning. You can see that here it is returning the output called hello, and that is what it is returning from the Lambda function. So Lambda function URL is to trigger the Lambda function by the browser. Okay, that's what you need to understand. This is a Lambda function URL, guys. That's what it is. So you can pass the environmental variable, guys. So what is the use of this environmental variables? So there are some, if you want to pass some inputs to your application code, okay, which through this particular environments, through this environment variables you can pass it. If you don't want to declare the values of that particular environment variables directly within the code, so you can just pass them as an environment variable. Let me click on this add environment variable, guys, and how you can add this environment variable. So just let me click on let me just put key. Okay, app type. Okay, type is equal to web app. Let me put something like this, web app. Okay, that's what the environment variable I would like to add. Let me click on save, and this is the environment variable that I have added. This environment variable, you can just consume that particular environment variable as part of your particular application code or Python lambda function code. See, when to use this environment variable, suppose for your database connections, you need to just give some inputs to your lambda function, like database endpoint, database username, and database password through the environment variable, something like that. So now how to use this environmental variable, guys? So you need to first import import OS module, OS, and I would like to just env var. Okay, I would like to get the environment variable os dot environ dot get. Okay, os.environ dot get is equal to type. Okay, this is how I'm just going to put, and I would like to print print. Okay, and env var. Okay, that's what I would like to print. Whatever the environment variable that we are getting from there, I'm just printing that as part of the console. Let me click on deploy this particular environment variable. Okay, and I would like to test it. Okay, this particular environment variable should be shown as part of your logs whenever that is tested. You just click on test it. Okay, if you just see that here, 1 second, type error. One second. Okay, so what is the problem is, let me just show you. The problem is this one, guys. Okay, you need to just give this in quotes, for example, something like this, and let me click on deploy. This is a key of the environment variable. If you just, this is a key. If you just go to the configuration environment variables, this is a key, guys. Okay, please do understand that is key. Okay, and let me click on trigger this one, test this one. Okay, you see that here, this is successful, and it should print web app. You can see that here, this is a value of environment variable name that is printed to the console. You can see that here, there's a print of env var. Okay, that's what it is. So this is how you can consume the environment variable that you have declared as part of your Lambda function code. Okay, so that is the environment variable, guys. Okay, that's the thing. Okay, the next configuration that we have, just let me go here, and you can just go to the concurrency and recursion. Concurrency and recursion. What is a concurrency and recursion, guys? Okay. Okay, so how parallelly, suppose multiple devices, multiple people accessing your Lambda function, that means triggering your Lambda function. So how parallelly the Lambda function should be executed? Like only how many parallel executions of your Lambda function should be happened? That is decided by the concurrency. How concurrently your Lambda function should be executed, that is decided by your concurrency. So per account, as this is a sandbox account, it is going to show you only 10. But yeah, per account, if you are using your own account, it is going to execute, like your account is going to have the 1,000 concurrent executions. Actually, that means you can execute Lambda function concurrently for 1,000 times. Okay, that's what you need to understand from the point, but not like 1,000 is per entire account, guys. Okay, that means it is applied to all the Lambda functions. Okay, that's what you need to understand in that particular account. Okay, 1,000 is applied to all the Lambda functions in that particular account. That's what you need to understand from the point. So how concurrently, how parallelly, how many parallel executions of the Lambda function should happen as part of your Lambda function execution? So that is decided by this concurrency. Okay, concurrency per account is 1,000. Okay, so that means in your account, 1,000 parallel executions can be happened by the Lambda functions, all the Lambda functions actually. But you can also allocate some reserved concurrency, guys. What is this reserved concurrency? That means, okay, out of available 1,000 concurrent executions, so I'm reserving 10 concurrent execution for this particular function only. That means always the concurrent executions, the number of concurrent executions should be available for this particular 10 number of concurrent executions should be available for this particular function. That's what you need to understand from the point. Okay, that's what it is. Okay. Okay, that's a reserved concurrency. What is reserved concurrency? Reserved concurrency means we are reserving some concurrency executions of your Lambda function as part of this particular reserved concurrency, guys. Reserved concurrency. That's what you need to understand from the point. I cannot do this because my my particular my account is not allowing me to do this, but you can definitely do this actually. That's what it is. That's a reserved concurrency. So you have something called provisioned concurrency. So what is this provisioned concurrency is, for example, whenever the Lambda function got triggered, okay, let me just draw the diagram. Whenever, let's say this is a Lambda function that we have, okay, let's say this is a Lambda function that we have. Okay, so let me just go here. Lambda function that we have. Whenever we have this Lambda function will be triggered by the multiple people, right? So just let me click on this one. Okay, let's say this is a one who is triggering the Lambda function. Okay, the user request is triggering the Lambda function. So whenever the Lambda function getting triggered, so there are a lot of events internally happens. Okay, whenever the Lambda function getting triggered, there are a lot of events internally happens actually. So that's what events that it is going to be happening is, whenever it got triggered, it is going to create some execution environment. Let me put it here, something like this. Come on. Okay, it is going to create, whenever someone invoke the Lambda function, it is going to create the execution environment, guys. Execution environment, ECUTION, execution environment. Okay, that's what it is going to create internally. Now what it is going to create after execution environment, it downloads the code actually. So it downloads the code and layers. It downloads the, after creating of execution environment, it downloads the code and layers actually. That's what it is. It downloads the code and layers. Okay, for example, into this particular execution environment, it downloads a code and layers into this particular execution environment. Downloads code and layers into this particular execution environment. So that's what you need to understand from the point. After downloading of the code of into this particular execution environment, it is going to start the runtime. That means, what is the runtime here? Python is the runtime. Okay, it's a Python is a runtime. It is going to start the runtime, guys. Start the runtime. Let me just click on this T symbol and just open it here. Start runtime. Okay, it is going to start you with the runtime. That's what you need to understand from the point, right? After starting of the runtime, it is going to import the libraries. So all these steps will be done whenever your Lambda function is invoked, guys. All these steps will be done whenever your Lambda function is invoked. Okay, so something like this. This is something called importing of libraries importing libraries. That's what you need to understand from the point. This is importing of libraries. Once the importing of libraries got completed, then your Lambda function is going to be executed. Lambda handler is going to be executed. This is the Lambda handler execution. Your Lambda function, what is in by Lambda handler? The method that the first method that will be executed as part of your Lambda function code, that is something called Lambda handler. Let me just go here and Lambda handler will be executed. Lambda handler execution. Lambda handler execution. That's what you need to understand from the point. See, these are all the steps that will be happening whenever the Lambda function got invoked by someone, or whether it is asynchronous invocation, whether it is a synchronous invocation. These are the things that will be automatically happening. This is the things that will be automatically happening. So you can see that here, whenever the Lambda function got invoked, these are all the things that is going to be happening. So now, see, suppose for example, for the at 8:45 I have invoked the Lambda function. 8:45 I have invoked the Lambda function. Okay, and at 9 a.m. I have invoked the Lambda function. So at 8:45 it does all these things. It creates execution environments, downloads the code and layers, start runtime, import libraries, and execution of your Lambda function. Okay, at 9 a.m. as well. Okay, it downloads the layers, code and layers, it start runtime, importing libraries, Lambda function, handler execution. So this, see here, whenever you are invoking your Lambda function, all these steps will be recreated. Okay, that's what you need to understand. Recreated. Okay, all these things will be redone actually. That's what it is. Okay, so here, if all these steps are recreating, so your lambda function performance is getting decreased, because whenever you are triggering the lambda function, other than the execution of your code, the other things are also running. Okay, let's, for example, downloading of the code and layers, starting runtime, importing library. These are all the other steps which are additional steps which are required by my application, which is happening, which has been happening for every execution of your lambda function, every execution of your lambda function. So here, this is something called cold start, guys. Whenever the lambda function got executed, so it is not just executing the lambda function. Other than executing of the lambda function, it is doing all the extra stuff in order to run my lambda function. So this is something called cold start of your lambda function, Okay, that's what you need to understand. How you can rectify this cold start is using the provisioned concurrency. You have something called provisioned concurrency. If you could just configure, click on add configuration. If you just click on, it can be configured for aliases and the versioning. But yeah, as we don't have alias and versioning, that's fine actually. So what is, if you configure the provisioned concurrency, means this execution, let's say I have configured the provision concurrency as 10. That means this execution environments will be, there will be a 10 execution environments will ready with this particular steps. That means download code and layers, start runtime, importing layers, they will be always be ready, okay, to run your code. Even though the lambda function is getting triggered or not, they will be ready. Whenever that is triggered, only this particular lambda handler execution, that means lambda function execution will also be, will only be happened, not all other things as part of your execution environment. Okay, whenever you configure the provisioned concurrency, that means your execution environment will be preloaded. When the preloaded, even though the lambda function is not getting triggered, your execution environment will be always be loaded. That is something called warm start, guys. Warm start of your lambda function. Just whenever the trigger happens, if you just configure the provision concurrency, whenever the trigger happens, it only execute the lambda function code. Other than that, it does nothing. Only execution of the lambda function code is going to be happening. At this particular time, the performance of your lambda function will be increased. The performance of your lambda function is going to be increased, guys. Increased. That's what you need to understand from the point. Okay, so that's a provisioned concurrency as well as the reserved concurrency. That's what you need to understand from the point. Okay, the next concept is nothing but the permissions, guys. I've already discussed about these permissions, but yeah, let me just put that things one more time for you. Okay, so just like, and also you can also mount the lambda function to the EFS file system. Okay, so if you want to have the data between the execution, suppose first trigger has happened by you to this lambda function, it has created some data. Okay, so and whenever you do the second trigger, whenever you want to do this second trigger, the data created by the first trigger, if you want the data triggered by the first trigger, so what you can do is you can create a EFS volume. And you can mount this volume to this particular lambda function, so that whenever the first trigger has happened, the data which is generated by that particular lambda function can be stored as per the EFS volume. And let's say the test file got created as per the EFS volume, the test file. And whenever the second trigger has happened, it can also reuse this text file actually. So if you want to share the files between the executions of the lambda function, you can just provision the EFS volume and attach the EFS volume to your lambda function. How you can attach is, if you just go to the configuration in the left side menu, you have something called file systems, and you can just click on edit file system. You can just click on uh EFS file system. This lambda function should be deployed in VPC if you want, like whenever, if you want such kind of functionality. But yeah, you can mount the file system to your lambda function, guys, in order to share the files across the executions in your lambda function. Actually, that's what you need to understand from the point. Okay, that's how like where it should be mounted also, you can just local mount path also you can just provide. Actually, that's what it is. Okay, that's how you can mount the volume to your EFS volume to your Lambda function. Okay, that's how it is. Okay, the next thing is permissions, which I've already discussed. Okay, there are two permissions that you can give to your Lambda function. One is through the IAM role, and one is something called resource based policy. One is IAM role, the other one is resource based policy, guys. What is the use of this IAM role here? IAM role use is if Lambda function want to access some other service, if Lambda function want to access some other service, then the Lambda function will get the permissions to access some other service using the IAM role. Suppose Lambda function want to access the DynamoDB table, that means Lambda function will be getting the permissions to access the DynamoDB table through the IAM role. But if someone is accessing the Lambda function, for example, S3 is triggering the Lambda function, CloudWatch is triggering the Lambda function, SNS is triggering the Lambda function. So Lambda function should allow that trigger from those services to trigger the Lambda function. How the Lambda function will be allowing the trigger is using resource based policy, guys. Resource based policy will be allowing the will be allowing the other services to trigger the Lambda function actually. But you just need to understand the execution role, the difference between execution role and the resource based policy. What is the execution role? If Lambda function want to trigger some other services, if Lambda function want to communicate with some other services, you need to use execution role. But if someone want to trigger the Lambda function, so that the Lambda function should allow the trigger, that is been happening using the resource based policy. That is the difference between the execution role and the resource based policy, guys. Resource based policy. So that's a difference that you need to understand. These are the permissions that you can give as part of the Lambda function. Okay, so that's a thing about the Lambda, guys. And you can also see here one more thing, Lambda handler. Okay, if you see that here, if you see, whenever the Lambda function is getting executed, whenever the Lambda function is getting triggered, the first method that will be executed is the method of something called Lambda handler. Okay, Lambda handler. That by default, whenever the Lambda function is getting triggered, this is the first method that will be executed actually. So, but you can decide which method to be executed whenever the Lambda function getting triggered. Actually, you can decide with which method to be executed whenever the Lambda function getting triggered initially. Okay, how you can decide is you can update the Lambda handler, Lambda function name here. Suppose if you just click on edit, let me just click on edit actually. So you can just remove this Lambda handler. I would like to put Lambda test, for example, Lambda test. This is the function whenever someone triggered whenever someone triggered the Lambda function. This is the function, this is a method that will be executed, that should be executed. That's what I'm saying. Okay, so that means we are saying that whenever someone trigger the Lambda function, this should be the method that should be executed. That's what we are saying. So let me put it here, def, and this is a method name. I would like to put of event, comma, context. Okay, I would like to just give this one and enter. Print of Lambda test, for example, that one. Let me click on deploy, guys, and I would like to just execute it. Now, if you see what it is executing, it is executing the Lambda test, where this Lambda test print statement is there. This Lambda test print statement is there as at the part of Lambda test method. So whenever I'm triggering the Lambda function, it is executing this particular Lambda test. Why it is executing Lambda test instead of Lambda handler? Because we have updated this particular configuration, which method should be executed whenever the Lambda function got triggered. That's what we have updated here at the handler section. So that is going to be, that's a reason why why this particular Lambda handler method is getting executed instead of Lambda handler itself. Okay, you can see that here. This is the Lambda test. It is getting executed whenever the function gets invoked actually. So this is how you can decide your own method to be invoked, your own method to be executed whenever the function get triggered. Okay, that's what you need to understand from the point. Okay, that is something called Lambda handler, guys. That is something called Lambda handler. So that's a things. So now it's session for Q&A, guys. Anyone have any questions? Is these things clear, everyone? That got discussed in our class actually. So that's what it is. That's why I'm not discussing here aliases and versioning. We have already discussed that in our class. Okay, that's a class for that's a session for today, guys. And yeah, now thank you for everyone for joining. And there will be one more session on not on Lambda. There will be a different webinar on ECS project deployment in the next class. So on next Sunday, as a webinar we are conducting, please do attend that as well. I'll be posting the link of that particular webinar as part of your Telegram group, so that you can join from there. Okay, that's the thing. So thank you everyone, thanks for joining with me, and I would like to close the session today, and we'll meet in the next session on next Sunday. Okay, thank you everyone, bye.